So you're in the market for a serious off-roader. And man, you've got a huge choice to make. Do you bet on a legend, a brand with decades of rock crawling history, or do you go with a new kid on the block, this high-tech challenger that's just rewriting the rules on value? Yeah, let's get into it.
And really, that's the heart of the dilemma we're looking at today. It's heritage versus innovation. In one corner, you've got Jeep. I mean, the name itself basically is off-roading, right? It's the definition of heritage. But then you've got this other player, GWM, with their tank SUVs, and they are just exploding onto the scene with all this modern tech. It's a classic showdown.
All right, so let's start with the icon, the champion, the one everyone else is always trying to beat. You know who I'm talking about. Jeep.
You know, when you say the word Jeep, it's more than just a brand. It's an American standard. This isn't just about selling cars. It's a whole legacy built on doing the impossible. And the reason that name is so powerful? Because they've earned it, time and time again, everywhere from battlefields to the most remote trails on the planet.
And that's the thing you gotta understand. The Jeep identity isn't some slick marketing campaign, no way. It was forged out there, in the real world, in the mud, on the rocks. For decades, the equation was simple. If you needed something that would absolutely get you through the rough stuff and back home again, you bought a Jeep. That kind of history, it builds a level of trust that you just can't buy.
But hey, nothing stays the same forever, right? The market is always moving. So now let's pivot and talk about the challenger, the one that's making everybody turn their heads, and that's GWM, especially with their tank series. And GWM's game plan is actually pretty brilliant. They're not just competing on one thing, they're hitting the market from every angle. First, the price is super aggressive. Then you get inside, and it feels premium, just loaded with features. But here's the real kicker. They're including serious off-road gear, like front and rear diff locks as standard. You know, the stuff you usually have to pay a ton extra for on other trucks. It is a full-on, direct assault on the old guard.
And look, this isn't just marketing hype. The experts who drive these things for a living, they're impressed. When a respected outlet like 4x4 Australia comes out and says they were surprised by how comfortable and capable this thing is, well, you gotta pay attention. That tells you GWM is playing for keeps. They're not just trying to be the cheap option, they're aiming for real performance. Okay, so you've got the legend and you've got the challenger. But how does all this talk translate to the dirt? To find out, we've got to see them go head-to-head on a truly legendary piece of trail.
The place has a name that, well, it tells you everything you need to know. It's called the Widowmaker. This thing is famous, and it's seriously intimidating. We're not talking about some scenic back road here. This is a place that will chew up and spit out vehicles that aren't up to the task. The stakes couldn't be higher.
And this is where the whole debate gets real. In this corner, you've got a classic Jeep JKU. It's modified, sure, but it represents that proven, tough-as-nails philosophy. And in the other corner, the newcomer, a brand spanking new GWM Tank 500. It looks like a family SUV, but it's packed with tech and it's here to prove it belongs. So the Jeep goes up first, and the one word everyone kept using to describe it was effortless. It just walked up like it wasn't even a challenge. The suspension flexed perfectly, it found grip where it looked like there was none, and it just climbed those rock steps. I mean, that right there is the Jeep legacy in action, making something ridiculously hard look easy. Okay, now it's the tank's turn, and it wasn't as pretty. You could see the suspension didn't have quite as much flex. At one point, it actually lifted a wheel right off the ground, just teetering there on a big step. The driver had to back it down and give it another shot. But, and this is the really important part, on the second try, with a little more gas, it dug in, it clawed its way up, and it made it to the top. It did the job. So what's the verdict from the guys who were right there watching? Well, they said the Jeep won because it was just so much smoother, so much more in control. But, and this is the big takeaway, they both made it to the top. The challenger stared down the exact same legendary obstacle as the icon and conquered it. That is an awesome real-world test, right? But when you're spending your own money, it's not just about one hill climb. It's also about what you get on paper. So let's step back from the trail and look at the specs side by side.
And wow, this chart tells a heck of a story about value. Just look at this. If you compare similar models, the GWM Tank 500 is giving you way more horsepower. It's got those front and rear lockers included as standard. The screen inside is massive compared to the Jeeps, and you can even get it with 7 seats. On almost every single line item here, the Challenger is just packing in more stuff for the price.
So if we boil down what all the experts are saying, it becomes really clear what each one brings to the table. With Jeep, you're buying that proven platform. You're buying the trust that comes with that legendary name. With GWM, you're getting incredible value for your money, all the latest tech, and an interior that feels way more expensive than it is. And that's the fundamental choice you have to make.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? The final call isn't going to be made on a spec sheet or even on one gnarly hill climb. It really comes down to what you care about most.
Look, there's no easy winner here because the answer is totally personal. What matters more to you? Is it the peace of mind you get from a name like Jeep, knowing it's backed by decades of proven engineering? Or are you tempted by the undeniable appeal of the GWM, where your money just gets you more power, more features, more modern tech?
So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself one simple question. When you're way out there, miles from anywhere, what do you want to be counting on? The battle-tested trust of a legend or the exciting, feature-packed promise of the future?